This is one fat boy, and here are my NBA game predictions for April 3rd. Tonight there's 12 games, and I will be going over the spreads and over-unders for each of them. For Washington at Boston, I'll be leaning towards Washington plus 13. I think a 13-point spread is a large one, so for Boston to win by more than 13, I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I do see Boston winning this game, but covering 13 points is a little much, so that's why I'd lean towards Washington plus 13. We lean towards an over 221 as Boston, they give up like 123 points against Indiana, then Washington had like 130 points on Dallas. So if they kind of play similarly to how they did last game, or Boston's defense isn't as great, and then Washington is scoring against a good defensive team, like this will obviously go over. But if you think both those will be fixed in this game, I'll take the under. But I think overall, if Washington is going to stay within 13 points, that means they're going to have to score the ball. So that's why I'd lean towards an over. For Dallas at Milwaukee, be going with Dallas plus 5. So Milwaukee, it's a team that I have a hard time just like betting on. Like they should win on paper. Like I won't be surprised if they win this game. It's just like covering the spread is something that they don't do consistently. So that's why I have to lean towards Dallas with the plus 5. Like I can see Dallas winning this game too. But overall, I think Dallas can keep it close. I'm sure they want to play better than they did in their last game. So that's why I bet on them to keep it close. But overall, spread-wise, this is probably a game I would not bet on the spread, as I can see like Milwaukee blowing out Dallas, and I can also see in turn Dallas winning this too. So like I think the spread and how this game can go is like really wide. But I think betting an under is probably the safest bet out of all this. Like if you're going to bet on this game, like spread or over under, like lean towards an under, as Dallas's defense should be much improved compared to their last game. Then Milwaukee, they can also play good defense too. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they hold like Dallas in like the low 100s, which that means Milwaukee would have to be like in the 120s. So I think lean towards an under is reasonable. For Denver at Los Angeles, I've got the lean towards Denver being the Lakers. Pretty much if you can get like a lead on the Lakers and then just kind of constantly pester the Lakers, maybe play the game a little faster, it's going to wear down the Lakers. Like pretty much give effort for 4 quarters. You're generally going to beat the Lakers as they only have 3. They can't get the full dollar. So that's why we lean towards Denver. Also, who's going to slow down Jokic on the Lakers? Like I think as the game goes on, he'll pick apart them slowly but surely. And also, it's kind of fun betting against the Lakers, as it's been paying out like over the past like week or two. Like well, for sure, just bet on them to lose. I will be taking an over, as Lakers defense isn't fantastic. Same with Denver's defense; it's not fantastic either. And I really expect Jokic to have like a good game. And I wouldn't be surprised if the role players for the Nuggets play well too, as just the effort given by the Lakers is not great. It's like, yeah, they have LeBron, yeah, they have Anthony Davis back, but we saw it didn't matter too much against the Pelicans, because when it came down to crunch time, it just turned into hero ball at the end for the Lakers, which Denver doesn't play that way, so it's more of a team when I'm going to bet on the team that plays as a team, which is Denver. For Detroit at the Pacers, we lean towards Detroit plus 2.5. So I read a little factoid that, and pretty much since All-Star break, if you bet Detroit and they're the underdog, just spread-wise, they've covered, well, it's won 16 out of the 18 times, and the 2 times where it didn't pay out, it tied. So just going off that pattern, I'd lean towards Detroit plus 2.5, and also looking at this game, how Denver's been playing. I mean, not Denver, how Detroit's been playing. I wouldn't be surprised if they win this. Like Indiana, it's like, yeah, they're kind of equal teams. Like they're not in the playoffs or towards the bottom. I think Detroit has a slight advantage because they've been winning games without like core pieces. Like they have something going. Like I'd be looking at them next year to take a step up. Maybe not like top 4, but it's like at least be in contention for a playoff spot. But I think Detroit has been playing better. overall spread-wise, probably won't touch this game as Indiana can get really hot and then just outpace the scoring of the Pistons. But I think the Pistons can also keep up scoring, but I think if the Pistons do win, the game's going to be a little more slowed down and a little bit more defensive. So that's why I'd take an under 232, but also if you think Pacers are going to win this, like take the over, as Indiana, if they're going to win this, are going to score a lot of points. So overall, this probably is a game I wouldn't touch personally. For Philadelphia at Cleveland, I'd lean towards Philadelphia minus 4.5. So both these teams played last night. Both these teams won. I think on paper, Philadelphia better team than the Cavaliers. You have Harden and Embiid. As long as like one of them gets going and as someone like a role player steps up, that should be enough to beat Cleveland. Cleveland is going to need like a good game. They have been struggling over the past few weeks. Like they've dropped down a few spots. While Philadelphia's like staying in that top 3 area, which I expect that to continue. So that's why I'd be leaning towards Philadelphia winning. If you just have more faith in the Cavs, like obviously take the Cavs. Like you can obviously argue that they'll figure out a way to win, but on paper, Philadelphia should win this. We lean towards an under though, as Sixers play a slower pace, like just all the free throws. They're not running it up and down. Same with Cleveland. They're not running up and down. They rely more on their defense. So that's why I'd lean towards an under for this game of 224. And also they both played last night. So, but in turn that doesn't mean too much because there's just been multiple instances where both teams played last night. It's been crazy high scoring, but also has been crazy low scoring. So, but I think just being a little more tired, like that should be like an under game. For the Knicks at the Magic, I'll be going with the Knicks minus 4.5. So I think the Knicks have been playing better over the last stretch than the Magic. So that's we lean towards the Knicks minus 4.5, as they still have a slimmer of hope for the playoffs, like or the play-ins. But I could be wrong, but I know it was like very, very tight window. So I assume the Knicks are just trying to win every game just so they keep that slight window open. So that's why I lean towards the Knicks. I will be taking over 215.5, as the Knicks defense is like all right, so it could clamp on the Magic, but usually when the Magic are at home, their offense has been better, so that's why I'd be leaning towards more scoring from the Magic, and then the Knicks have been playing a little faster on offense, so a little more scoring that way too. And also, so they're playing it through R.J. Barrett, their offense, not through Randall. Offense has been better, so that's why I'd lean towards an over 215.5. For the Heat at Toronto, be with Toronto minus 3.5. Toronto's been really hot as of late, and then Miami, yeah, they've picked it up, but I don't know, like the top seeds in the East they're playing really weird, like they're losing a lot of games, so that's why I just have to lean towards Toronto minus 3.5. They'll probably just sneak out with a win. Also playing at home, a little bit of an advantage. I'll be going over 212.5, as Miami, they weirdly scored a lot of points last night, or last time they played, and then Toronto they're pretty consistent about scoring like that in that 110 to 115 range. Like they're always right around there. It doesn't matter who they play. Like they're always like somewhere between like 105, 115, like in that like chunk. So that's why I'd just lean towards an over as 212 for like a Toronto game. For the over under, it's like I usually lean towards like an over almost every time. For the Suns at the Thunder, we lean towards Phoenix. That should be a minus 14, as even though it is a 14-point spread, for the Suns losing their last game, I think they want to just come out hot, just take care of the Thunder, and just get another win on the board. Like obviously, if this was plus 14, it's like that just be like minus 1,500 odds. Like it wouldn't be worth betting, but Phoenix minus 14, I think is very possible. And also just like the end of the bench for the Suns is pretty much just as good as like the Thunder's like bench and even some starters. So a lot more talent on the Suns for them to win. And when it does go to garbage time, it's like the Suns aren't losing whatever lead they had either. We lean towards an over, as the Suns offense should just decimate the Thunder. Like this should be a decimation of a game. I would not be surprised if it's just like it's a blowout. If this does go like all 4 quarters, I'd be very surprised. Like, but good on the Thunder for coming out and playing. but I will lean towards an over 224. Suns should be able to score like 125, like no problem. That means the Thunder just need to score like 99 points then. So that's why I'd lean towards an over. For Portland at the Spurs, we lean towards Portland plus 14.5, as once again, like 14.5 points is a pretty large spread. I believe last time Spurs played them, they actually did cover that. So if you think the Spurs are going to do that again, obviously take that. Honestly, I almost might want to change this to Spurs minus 14.5, but I think Portland, just like every few games, just have like one of those, even though they're pretty much all injured, they just happen to just keep it a little closer than usual. So this could be one of those games. Like I think it's the pattern in turn is this game. So that's why I'd be Portland plus 14.5. But I think if you're just betting like normally, like lean towards San Antonio minus 14.5. But I think betting an over 2-3.5 is probably the safest out of all of this, as I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs do score 130 points, like in that 130, 135 range. Like no one in Portland is going to slow down the Spurs. And so that means Portland just needs to get like 100 points. If you think Portland get like 100, 105 points, that means this will probably go over. For Minnesota at Houston, be lean towards Minnesota minus 12.5. Minnesota, they're kind of playing like kind of iffy right now, but they did win their last game against Denver. Might have something click, so in turn they should be able to beat the Rockets. So I mean, hence why they're 12.5 point favorites, so they should win. They got to keep their spot in the playoffs. And two, like their high power offense mixed with like kind of their risky defense, how they play, should be enough to disrupt the Rockets and like have like a sizable lead. Also, you have more reliable scores on Minnesota, so another reason why to lean towards a Minnesota minus 12.5. But I will lean towards an under 242.5. I just see 242 points. Like that is a very high amount. So this is pretty much whenever you see like a game like the over-under is like 238 or above, I tend to just not bet on those, as just like those games are too wonky. Like the payouts, there's always never enough, and it's just too like risky. But 242.5, I'd lean towards an under. Like this game could obviously go 260, but I'll be leaning towards an under, as I think Minnesota's defense will affect Houston, just how they play. And then covering 242 like points, I mean, you got to be running like up and down whole game, be making a lot of shots. Like I think one of these teams will just have like a cold quarter, and that'll like affect this like greatly. But I think like one team will be scoring at least like 130 points. I wouldn't be surprised at that. At least like 120. Like 120 from one of these teams should be like not a problem. But I just have to lean towards an under overall. For Golden State at the Kings, so the Warriors played last night, but the Kings didn't. So that's why I'd lean towards Sacramento plus 6.5. I think the Warriors should still win overall, like on paper. Like you got enough like young guys where they're not as affected by a back-to-back. But I think the Kings, just with like the last few games, usually those bottom tier teams just try to like sneak in like one more win. Also, with Warriors clinching a playoff berth, they might rest a few guys for this game. To be honest, didn't read yet on that, but if Golden State does rest a few guys, obviously lean towards Sacramento plus 6.5. As the Kings, they have young players that still want to prove themselves, so they're going to be playing. We lean towards an over 221. I believe the over-under is not out for this yet, but if I were to guess, I'd have it, and something that I would actually place would be over 221.5, as if it's more the young guys playing for Warriors, it's going to be a little faster paced, a lot more threes, and also Kings being so young, they also play faster pace, higher power offense. Defense isn't great, so should be an offensive game overall. So over 221.5. And generally, I could probably bring it all the way up to like 227. And then if it's anything to the 230s, like 238, I'd just probably take an under for 238, just throwing out a general spread. And for the Pelicans at the Clippers, we go with the Pelicans plus 2.5. So coming off that big win against the Lakers for the Pelicans. And then the Clippers, they're also in that playoff spot. I believe they're 8th seed. This should be a good game overall. If I had to lean towards one team, I'd lean towards the Pelicans. But spread-wise, probably wouldn't touch this game, as I can see both these teams winning. Like, there's a reason why the spread's only 2.5 points. So, but I will lean towards a more defensive game overall. Like, both teams should be able to clamp down on defense. It's probably going to be a slower pace, playoff style of game. So that's why I'll be leaning towards an under 223, just because this does affect the playoffs. This does affect seeding. So that's how I lean towards an under. Thank you for watching. As always, have fun watching basketball. Have fun betting and good luck on your bets. And thank you for watching.